Today we want to beat every single Pokemon champion, and there is a lot of them, as Wally. Wally's a character from Generation 3 who can also get himself a shiny that you can't catch. Not fair, right? But this is a team we will be using for the first few games. Then we will upgrade to this team, his Oras team. But would he be able to take on and defeat every champion? If he does manage to beat them all, there's 3 powerful trainers he must face to claim victory. With some added rules for more difficulty, could Wally beat every Pokemon champion? First up is Pokemon Fire Red, and we have the champion for this game, Blue. Honestly, Gardevoir is super strong, but Blue's team can hurt us, so let's attempt our first champion. Blue's lead is his Pidgeot, and we lead off with our shiny Gardevoir. It's only fitting we use a shiny. A sidekick brings the Bird Jesus super low turn 1 as we take an Aerial Ace for a quarter of our health. Blue then full restores up Pidgeot, but we bring it back to the red with a sidekick. A final attack, and we pick up our first knockout of the run. Second, Blue sends out Arcanine, who we do a tremendous amount to with a sidekick again thanks to a critical hit, and take it down. Third is his Ace Blastoise. A sidekick brings him to below half as we eat up a Hydro Pump. Blastoise eats his berry, healing him, and then Gardevoir knocks him out to take down half of his team already. Alakazam is 4th, and our moveset means we can't really hurt him. I set up a Future Sight attack as we take a sidekick, but we survive it. We sidekick him to nearly half before we live the next move on 3 HP. We sidekick him again the next turn as for some reason he Future Sights us. This means he falls to the Future Sight we set up earlier. 5th is Rhydon, who has weak special defense and falls to his sidekick, leaving only one Pokemon left to stand in the way of a Gardevoir sweep. We Future Sight Executor, and then we finally fall to a Giga Drain. We swap into Altaria, who eats up the Future Sight that Alakazam set up earlier as we hit a great Aerial Ace. Then we get put to sleep. The next turn he fires an egg at our bird before taking the Future Sight attack and falling, giving us an extremely easy first champion victory. It's time to move on to the second. Lance is the champion of Johto and the next we face. He's a flying type, a dragon type champion. We have good coverage, but our team is super frail versus him. Lance's lead is Gyarados, and Gardevoir shows its strength once more by taking it down with a single sidekick thanks to a critical hit. But then is Aerodactyl, who outspeeds us and crunches us for massive damage, lowering our defense as our sidekick brings him low. Lance full restores as we do great damage with a sidekick before we fall to an Aerial Ace the following turn. I go into Delcatty now and get hit with a Rock Slide before taking it out with a very weak return. This brings out his main Dragonite, who we charm as we dodge a Fire Blast. We then sing to put him to sleep. Then we go for an assist and we pull Ice Punch for massive damage before we die to an Outrage. I go into Magneton and take it down with a Thunderbolt. This brings out Charizard, who also falls to a single Thunderbolt too. Next comes the level 49 Dragonite. We do over half with Thunderbolt before we get paralyzed. We then proceed to get Dragon Rush Paraflinch to death. So I decide to go into Roselia and pick up the knockout of a Sludge Bomb, leaving him with just one Dragonite left. We Sludge Bomb again for fantastic damage before we fall to a single Dragon Rush. I now go into Azumarill and go for an Ice Punch, and that's more than enough to take it down, beating our second champion. It's time to move on to Hoenn, where 2 champions await us. In Pokemon Ruby, Steven is the champion. He has mainly Rock and Steel types. Our first attempt goes pretty badly. Metagross and full restores is just way too much for my weakened team to handle. I think if I play it a bit smarter with my Pokemon, I can end up with a better matchup at the end. Let's try again. Steven's lead is Skarmory, and turn 1 I Calm Mind, raising our special attack and defense as Skarmory misses a Toxic. We Calm Mind once more as we take a Steel Wing attack. With a +2 sidekick, we still don't one-hit KO Skarmory, and he sets up a layer of spikes. Steven full restores and we bring him back to the red. A final sidekick and down Skarmory goes. Cradilly then comes out and falls to a +2 sidekick from our Gardevoir too, and this brings out Claydol. We set up a Future Sight as he sets up a Reflect, and we sidekick the next turn for over half as he then sets up a Light Screen. This means he survives another sidekick in the red as an Earthquake really hurts us before he then takes our Future Sight attack, falling. Aggron has super low special defense and we crit him, so he dies to a sidekick. This brings out the Ancient Bug Armaldo. We sidekick once more to bring him to the yellow before an Ancient Power puts us on 1 HP. Steven full restores, but our sidekicks are doing way too much damage so the Gardevoir can eventually take down the Ancient Bug Pokemon, leaving us with just a Metagross. But we're out of sidekick PP, so all we can do is set up a Future Sight and we fall to a Meteor Mash. We go into Magneton and we Thunderbolt for fantastic damage as one single Earthquake takes us down. I now go into Altaria as he eats with his berry and we we Dragon Breath him, we get the paralysis, but he takes a future sight attack and just dies from it, giving us a victory over Steven, but it's still one champion in Hoenn left to face. Our second champion for Generation 3 is Wallace. He's a water type specialist with some powerful Pokemon, but Gardevoir being the beast it's showing and a Roselia with a Magneton, we should have this fight. Wallace leads with a massive Wailord, and turn 1 Gardevoir hits a fantastic psychic attack to bring the whale to the red, before he sets up the rain boosting water type attacks. Wallace full restores, but we bring the whale all the way back down the following turn. Then Gardevoir picks up the knockout, and I'm really enjoying the power here of our lead Pokemon. Second, he sends out Tentacruel. It's part poison type, so it falls to Gardevoir too. Then is Ludicolo, who hits a rain boosted Surf for around half as our psychic attack deals massive damage. A final attack now the rain's ended, and Gardevoir once again is showing her power. Whiscash is fourth and takes a psychic, and then he goes for an Amnesia, raising his special defense, so he lives the next on a Sliver and fires off a huge earthquake, putting us low. Wallace full restores, but we just keep on attacking him. Eventually Whiscash finally takes down Gardevoir, giving us an easy swap into Roselia, who can finish off Whiscash with a Giga Drain. This then brings out Milotic. We Giga Drain for great damage as an Ice Beam in return nearly takes us out. Milotic heals with its berry, and our next Giga Drain critical hits to take down Milotic. This brings out Gyarados, who we keep on attacking, but then Hyper Beams us, putting us on 1 HP. I then Sludge Bomb for some reason, but it doesn't do too much damage, so I then Giga Drain, but Gyarados goes for a Surf that now doesn't take us out thanks to the HP recovery from Giga Drain, and we just keep exchanging moves before Roselia eventually does fall to a Hyper Beam. This now gives us an easy swap to Delcatty to take down Gyarados with a return, beating Generation 3 champions. It's time to move on to Gen 4 and get a whole new team of Pokemon. Cynthia is a champion of the Sinnoh region. Her team is a powerful one, but we've got a whole new team apart from Altaria for now, and we've got some real powerhouses. Huge power Azumarill, a Garchomp, and of course a Gallade. Let's face Cynthia. Cynthia's lead is Spiritomb, and it's a bad matchup for Gallade's debut, as a Leaf Blade doesn't really hurt Spiritomb, but an Omnius Wind does to us. We Leaf Blade again, putting him in the red. As we do, Cynthia cheats and full restores, as we then bring him back to a Sliver before we fall to a Silver Wind and he gets a stat boost. But this doesn't matter as Altaria takes him out with an Aerial Ace. This brings out her Garchomp, who we Dragon Breath for good damage before we survive a Dragon Rush on 2 HP. We Dragon Breath again, paralysing Garchomp this time, and he heals with his berry before he misses a Dragon Rush. We keep on Dragon Breathing as he misses his attacks. We bring him to a Sliver before he kills Altaria with a Brick Break. We now go into Azumarill and take it down with an Ice Punch, but this just brings out Roserade, who we take it out with a huge power Ice Punch too. Then is Togekiss, who we proceed to hit with another Ice Punch, and we eat up an Air Slash. Another punch and another knockout for Azumarill. This brings out Lucario. We take an Aurasphere, but not as well as I thought, before a single Aqua Tail puts him on a literal Sliver. Cynthia full restores, and we bring him back down. I then forget I have Aqua Jet, and I die to an Earthquake. That was stupid. I swap into Magnezone, who proceeds to get the kill on Lucario with a Discharge. Milotic is Cynthia's last Pokemon. I Discharge, it doesn't do enough damage to take her out, and then she goes for a Miracle to completely obliterate Magnezone. But I'm not worried, we have a Roserade to finish the fight with the Giga Drain, beating Generation 4's champion. It's time to head to Univers where 2 more champions await us. First up in Gen 5 is Alder, and he's got some solid Pokemon with a glaring weakness to fire with a few bugs on his team, and we don't have any fire Pokemon just yet. Alder's lead of a Selgor isn't the best again for Gallade, as we take a Bug Buzz to nearly half as our Psycho Cut does great damage. Then for some reason he goes for a me first, doing barely nothing with our own move before we take him down. This brings out a Scavalier, who takes a close combat to under half before killing us with an Iron Head. I send out Magnezone to revenge kill it with a Discharge, and out comes Buffalon. We Discharge once more, and we paralyze him as he gets Parahaxed. We then Flash Cannon to put him on a Sliver before a single Earthquake just takes us out, showing our frailty here. Altaria then comes out, and I go for a Dragon Dance on the full restore. We then Aerial Ace for basically nothing, and we take massive damage from a Stone Edge. We Aerial Ace once more for more chip damage before we fall to the Buffalo. We go into Roserade to throw Sludge at him and take him down. This brings out Volcarona. We Shadow Ball for fantastic damage, and then he instantly kills us with an Overheat. Now I finally decide to unleash Garchomp, who Stone Edges Volcarona, and that's definitely a dead bug. This brings out Vanillux, another Stone Edge, and another kill for a monster. And finally, Druddigon. It's a Dragon v Dragon standoff, but we are stronger, and a single Dragon Claw and Alder meets his maker in Wally. But we still have one more champion in Gen 5 to face. Iris is the second champion, and the majority of her Pokemon are dragons. Garchomp will be fantastic here and could practically sweep her team, but Haxorus's Focus Sash could be a problem. Iris's lead is Hydreigon, and in a rare change for once, we can outspeed an an Oko Hydreigon with a close combat. Her second choice is Aggron, weirdly enough, who also dies to a close combat, and Iris is throwing this fight. Then comes Archeops. We're actually faster, and a Leaf Blade puts him at below half, activating Defeatus, but our stats are lowered, so we fall to an Acrobatics. Magneton then gets rock slided for a little bit of damage before we take it out. This brings out Erase Haxorus, who immediately ends Magnezone with an Earthquake. So I decide to go into Altaria and Dragon Breath him as he sets up a Dragon Dance. He then goes to a +2 in Dragon Dances as our next Dragon Breath puts him in the red and paralyzes him. Iris then uses a full restore, but we still snag a paralysis on our next Dragon Breath. We bring him all the way to the red before he connects a +2 Dual Chop and destroys Altaria. But we've got an easy swap into Roserade to pick up the knockout with a Sludge Bomb, and out comes Druddigon. We throw some more sludge at his face and we get hit from rocks, bringing us low. I then lock myself into Petal Dance to take him out. Then comes her last Pokemon, Lapras. We Petal Dance for the one-hit knockout, defeating Iris in a pretty easy battle too. With Gen 5 conquered, it's time for the 3DS games and Gen 6. Diantha is a champion of Kalos and who we take on next. Her team's pretty strong and she's got a Mega Gardevoir, but looking at her team, Gallade can just shred it. Let's give it a shot. Turn 1, Hawlucha hits a poison jab on our shiny Gallade and he snags a poison, so that takes away his longevity. But a Psycho Cut just straight away deletes her Luchador bird. Second, she sends out Galgeist, and actually this is an issue for once. We can't hurt it, so we go for a Psycho Cut for over half as it Phantom Forces. This means we can't do anything, and Galgeist actually takes away a massive threat to her team. But we've got a Talonflame now who has Gale Wings and can immediately priority Brave Bird Galgeist for a one-hit knockout. This brings out a Tyrantrum. We can Steel Wing it super effectively for good damage, and he goes for a Head Smash, which is more than enough to take down the bird, putting him in the red too from recoil. Now we unleash our Blue Ball of Death as Diantha full restores. We go for a Play Rough and huge power demolishes the T-Rex. This brings out Aurorus, the Ice Dinosaur. It's weak to water and an Aqua Tail just destroys him too. This brings out another dragon in Gudra, but you guessed it, Azumaril's huge power is showing and down he goes with a single Play Rough, leaving only a Gardevoir left. Diantha Mega Evolves it, but the stat changes don't kick in straight away and our Blue Ball of Death picks up the knockout, destroying Diantha, and Wally is really cruising now. Let's move on to Alola, where a trickier opponent usually lies. Hau is the person we fight to become champion here, and he's always one of the most trickiest. His team really does pack a punch. I think Wally can deal with him, maybe even first try, but it depends on how we deal with his major threats. Hau's lead is an Alolan Raichu, and Gallade tanks a Psychic pretty decently and hits a Leaf Blade for way over half. Then Raichu goes for a Thunderbolt, bringing us low before a Leaf Blade finishes him off. This just brings out Noivern, who proceeds to take down Gallade with an Air Slash. We then send out our Blue Ball of Death, we take an Air Slash and take down Noivern with a single Play Rough. Hau then sends out Leafeon, who's faster than us, and Leaf Blades to instantly take down Azumarill. We now send out Talonflame, who's just way too strong for Leafeon and can start to Brave Bird spam. Leafeon falls to a single Brave Bird, and then he sends out Crabominable, who's part Fighting type, and he falls to a single Brave Bird too. This brings out Tauros, who intimidates us, lowering our attack, so we go for a Brave Bird again, dealing nearly half before a Double Edge seals our fate. I go into Roserade, who barely survives a Double Edge from Tauros on 8 HP and can finish him off with a Petal Dance. Now Hau goes into Incineroar, and I'm hoping it burns its Z move now. We Poison Jab for a tiny bit of damage and we snag the poison, as he does in fact decide to go for his Z move, Inferno Overdrive. He drops a massive nuke on Roserade's head even though it's at 8 HP. Perfect. We can now swap into Garchomp and let him get a bit more time in the spotlight. We connect a Stab Earthquake to take down Incineroar, and we beat Hau first try too. This is looking on par with our Barry run. We are destroying these champions. But now it's time to leave the 3DS games behind and move on to the Switch ones. So for Trace, we don't have a full team of Pokemon. In fact, we only have one this run, and that's Magneton. So like last video, I'm going to max his AVs and turn him into a literal god. We have to defeat Trace with just a Magneton, let's do it. We lead with our god for this fight, Magneton, and while Trace is just in for a world of pain. He Mega Evolves his Pidgeot, but a super effective Thunderbolt makes super short work of his Mega. Second is a Firehorse Rapidash, but Magneton so charged up another Thunderbolt takes it down. This brings out Marowak, a ground type. We have Flash Cannon, but it actually survives from sheer determination and actually really hurts us with a Boomerang too. However, Trace now uses a plethora of full restores as we just can't quite get the one-hit knockout on Marowak. Eventually, Trace runs out of items and we take him down. This brings out the bulky grass type Vileplume. I go for a Tri Attack and we do around half as he sets up a Solar Beam, but Vileplume never gets a chance to hurt our Magneton as we take him down with another Tri Attack. Then Trace goes into Slowbro, but it's water type and Magneton zaps a bulky Pokemon to defeat it, leaving his last Pokemon and ace Jolteon. We go for a Tri Attack to bring it get to half as we dodge a Thunder. A final tri-attack and we take down Jolteon, sweeping Trace with a Magneton. I'm sorry Trace, but it's time to move on to Generation 8. The champion for Sword and Shield is Leon. His team is really strong with a Gigantamax Charizard. However, the way this challenge is shaping up, I think we can beat him first try too. Let's do this. Leon's lead is his Aegislash and Gladewell is in big trouble. Aegislash King Shield and I Psycho Cut, so turn 1 is a dead turn. The next turn I Psycho Cut once more for basically nothing as he changed stances and hits a really hard Shadow Ball. Glade holds on and the next turn can Psycho Cut once more for better damage thanks to it being in sword stance before we fall to a Flash Cannon. I now just go straight into our Flame Bird Talonflame and go for a Flare Blitz, but I get played as he King Shield, meaning no damage taken and we reduce our attack by 1 stage, not good. I Flare Blitz once more and we still take it down, but out comes Dragapult. Talonflame hits a Brave Bird and thanks to the minus attack, Dragapult lives it at half before taking Talonflame low with a Thunderbolt. A final Brave Bird and Talonflame picks up a second knockout before we fall to Recoil. I now go into the Blue Ball of Death as he goes into Haxorus. He hits a super hard Poison Jab but a Play Rough from Azumarill and down he goes. He then brings out Mr. Rhyme, the dancing Mr. Mime. I Play Rough again and Mr. Rhyme just falls over too. This brings out Inteleon that actually can't hurt us. It goes for a weak snipe shot before falling to a Play Rough 2. Then Leon sends out his last Pokemon and Ace Charizard. He Gigantamaxes him and goes for a Max Rockfall which takes down Azumarill and sets up the sand in the process. Most of our Pokemon are now super weak to Charizard, so this is not great. Magnezone comes out and has got a chance to win it, but Charizard is faster and goes for his signature move G-Max Wildfire and burns Magnezone to a crisp. I go into Roserade and we hit a pretty weak Shadow Ball as we get obliterated by a Max Airstream, and now Charizard's raised his speed too. But Gigantamax now ends and I send out Garchomp. Charizard air slashes us, but thankfully no crit and flinch, we land a Stone Edge and obliterate him, beating Leon and becoming champion of Gala. It's time for Scarlet and Violet's champion. The last champion is Geeta for Generation 9 and she's got some really unique Pokemon. Wally loses Roserade here, so I decided to add Altaria back to the team in replacement. Let's defeat the last champion of the mainline games. Her lead is a Sparfer and poor Gallade is at a disadvantage again, but we do a massive bit of damage with a Leaf Blade as a Dazzling Gleam we take a lot better. So the next turn Gallade takes down the Psychic Ostrich with a Leaf Blade. Second Geeta sends out Go-Go. We hit a great Psycho Cut before we fall to a Play Rough. It was a critical hit, but I really don't think that mattered. I now go into Talonflame and we reply with a Stab Brave Bird to take down the goal. Third she sends out King Gambit, Bishop's Evolution. Talonflame goes for a Flare Blitz doing fantastic damage, but a single Stone Edge is enough to take us down. So once again I go into our Blue Ball of Power ready to try and decimate. Azumarill takes down King Gambit with an Aqua Tail and this brings out the bulky Ice Slab Avalugg. Azumarill hits an Aqua Tail for great damage as we resist an Avalanche. We then start Iron Tailing to bring him to the red as we go under half. We then miss an Iron Tail and we take an Earthquake to a sliver of HP before the next turn we get to take him out of an Iron Tail. This brings out the Psychic Fish Veluza. We outspeed and then we miss a Play Rough before we fall to a Psycho Cut. So I go into Magnezone to quickly dispatch of it with a Discharge. This leaves her last Pokemon and her ace, Glamora. Geeta terrestrializes into a pure rock type as a Flash Cannon from Magnezone obliterates her, defeating Glamora, beating Geeta and every single Pokemon champion as Wally. Or have we? Atop of the snowy Mount Silver is legendary trainer Red, and a champion trainer at that. Well, our first attempt goes horribly wrong. Lapras is just a brick wall that Azumarill can't deal with, and we really go toe to toe with him. I did get unlucky with paralysis, but I think we can pull through. Gardevoir outspeeds and takes down Pikachu with a single psychic attack. Second, Red chooses Snorlax, and I go for a Calm Mind as we take a crunch but not well at all. I then psychic for massive damage as we fall to a second crunch from Snorlax. I now go into Delcatty and we go for a return, and it does just enough damage to take him down. This brings out Blastoise. We return for good damage before a Focus Blast just destroys the cat Pokemon. I go into Roselia and we can take down Blastoise with a Giga Drain. This then brings out Charizard. We Sludge Bomb for great damage before we fall to a single Air Slash and we're going 1 for 1 again. I then go into Altaria and Aerial Ace to put him in the red as a Dragon Pulse does over half to us. Red 4 restores as I Dragon Dance boosting my attack and speed. We then Aerial Ace once more for a critical hit to put him back in the red before we fall to a Dragon Pulse. I go into Azumarill as Red uses yet another 4 restore and an Aqua Jet brings him to half. I Aqua Jet again, but Red doubles into Venusaur. I then Iron Tail for massive damage as he thankfully misses a Sleep Powder. This means Azumarill can take down Venusaur with another Iron Tail, and only Lapras is left. We exchange Iron Tails and Body Slams, but we don't miss even once, and we get the defense drop. So when Red 4 restores, he's taking more damage, and a final Iron Tail takes down Lapras, beating Red. He vanishes and we're victorious. Team Plasma N and the champion himself, who also has a legendary we need to win to continue. N leads with Reshiram and we lead Gallade. Our Psycho Cut does practically nothing as a Fusion Flare really hurts us. We Psycho Cut once more before our final Fusion Flare takes us down. I now decide I've not really used Garchomp that much, so let's destroy N with him. One Dragon Claw deals with a legendary Pokemon, then out comes Vanillix, who falls to a single Stone Edge too. Third is Archeops, who also falls to a single Stone Edge, and fourth is Klinklang, who dies to a single Earthquake. Fifth is Zoroark, who's frail and falls to a single Earthquake, bringing out his last Pokemon, Caracosta. A Earthquake brings him to his Sturdy as he hits a waterfall for good damage. N4 restores as we bring him back to his Sturdy with an Earthquake, then a final Dragon Claw takes him down, sweeping N with Garchomp. This is why I always try and keep him in the back, he's just way too strong. Let's move on to the last champion. Kieran, the most latest champion to be introduced and one of the hardest. This has a focus on double battles. I've now swapped out Altaria for Gardevoir. Having both a Gardevoir and a Gallade, I think it's fitting for this battle. Let's do this. Kieran leads Politoed and Dragonite with an emphasis on a rain setup here. We lead Gardevoir and Gallade. Turn 1 we Leaf Blade Politoed to bring him under half, and then Gardevoir's Energy Ball is more than enough to deal with a pesky water type. But Dragonite is now free to hit a 100% accuracy Hurricane on Gallade and nuke it, so that's not the best trade there for me. I go into Azumarill to take advantage of the rain as he goes into the monster Porygon Z. Porygon Z then misses a Hyper Beam on Gardevoir as we Icy Wind for good damage and lower their speed. This means Azumarill outspeeds Dragonite and takes it down with a Play Rough, a perfect turn of events. Kieran sends out the Fairy and Dark type Grimmsnarl now. He sets up a Reflect boosting the team's defense as the Psychic puts Porygon Z on a sliver of HP. He then does connect a Hyper Beam on Azumarill, completely taking it out of existence, and then he takes himself down to Life Orb recoil damage too. I decide to go into Garchomp, which is a bad move as Kieran sends out Incineroar, who has Intimidate, so he lowers Garchomp's attack by one stage. Incineroar then fakes out Gardevoir as Garchomp's Stone Edge doesn't do too much to Incineroar and his Spirit Break brings us to below half. The next turn I Stone Edge once more, but we miss it, and Gardevoir's Dazzling Gleam does fantastic damage to them both as Incineroar heals with his berry. Then Incineroar's Darkest Lariat takes down our Garchomp as the Spirit Break really hurts Gardevoir. This lowers her special attack too thanks to its secondary effect. Now I unleash Talonflame once more. A Brave Bird takes Incineroar down lower as a Dazzling Gleam from Gardevoir takes down Grimmsnarl, but Incineroar lives once again on a sliver and he takes down Gardevoir with a Flare Blitz, leaving us with a 2-on-2. But Incineroar is weakened and we have a Magnezone left. Kieran sends out his Ace Hydrapple, he terastallizes into a pure fighting type as Talonflame's Brave Bird critical hits, taking down Hydrapple in just one attack, which is perfect for us, as Magnezone then hits a Discharge, killing every other Pokemon on the field and being the last Pokemon standing. And with that, we defeat Kieran and defeat every single Pokemon champion as Wally. Wow, I'm amazed yet again, this time by Wally's strength. Just like Barry, we didn't really struggle except from failing on Red and Steven. They just have a really strong team at their disposal. If you have any ideas on who you want to see next, let me know in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe if you're new. As always, I appreciate you watching and I'll see you in the next one.